All right, you're watching Morning at NTV with me, Malaki Vilodera and Romeo Busiku. Many thanks for making us the #1 breakfast show right here in the country. We're getting into matters electricity and with a keen focus on R.E.A, the Rural Electrification Agency right here in the country. They did something that is quite of importance just the other day. And just in case you missed out on this one, take a watch, then we'll be back with the conversation. Stay.
The new Minister of Energy, Goret Kitutu, has launched R.E.A information system that will go a long way in curbing a problem of power thefts, provide information on new connections and how much power is consumed. The system is funded by World Bank.
For instance, we can even monitor those who are stealing, hooking, if you go to Mbale, for instance, there's a lot of hooking on live, conductors.
We are talking about equity. Whenever you show anything now in the parliament, people want to see where have you shown? Because of equity, you have to give equally.
It was also noted that some of the rural electrification projects are launched without the political arm of government.
And actually, I think ED have told you that we want even the head of state to be launching these connections to the community. He likes mingling and giving these services to those very, very poor. So stop launching those projects yourselves.
Although the new system checks power theft, Kitutu tasked R.E.A to use insulated power lines to avoid illegal connections.
This particular conversation now, although electricity remains, of course, one of the critical factors for Uganda to attain its growth trajectory right here and social economic transformation of her fast-growing population, we have an overall rate of access to electricity in Uganda that is remaining low. Now, this by 2019 stood at about 19% overall and about 8% in rural areas. This energy deficiency and high population growth have seen even more pressure on the forest, of course, as just over 3.2% of the total population has access to modern cooking fuels. For an in-depth conversation, of course, to get to understand where the energy sector stands at and with regards to this particular new system that has been rolled out, of course, courtesy of R.E.A and the World Bank, I do have in studios Mr. Grace Bilikade. He is an environment, of course, a specialist who works as a project manager with R.E.A, of course, that's the Rural Electrification Agency, for the CDM project. The CDM project, critically, is the Clean Development Mechanism. Many thanks. Welcome to Morning at NTV.
Thank you.
Your title is quite a mouthful. I had a struggle right there.
Yeah.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Let us in on this particular, kind of new development in that regard with R.E.A. What you just saw right now. What is it all about? Well, the critical, kind of selling point was that it will curb theft of electricity, which, when you look at it critically, means illegal connections of electricity. So let us in on this particular system and how it works.
Yeah. Before we talk about the system, let's talk about how it was conceived. R.E.A's mandate is to take power to rural communities. And in taking power, this power is clean because it is generated from hydro, which is a little bit clean. And when you take this power, people connect. When they connect, we displace use of dirty fuels like kerosene. And when you displace the use of dirty fuels, it means you are reducing on generation of greenhouse gases. Greenhouse gases, these are gases that cause climate change.
Correct.
That cause climate change. And Uganda is a party to a number of conventions, United Nations Framework Climate Change, United Nations Framework on the Climate Change Convention, and the associated Kyoto Protocol. Now, under Kyoto Protocol, it has a number of mechanisms And these mechanisms, some of them deal with the trade of emissions. Now, we saw an opportunity, given that we're taking this power and we're reducing emissions, we saw an opportunity to tap into this carbon finance. And what we did, we developed a project. That project is accelerating rural electrification through off-grid and on-grid connections. Now, that project leads to emission reductions. Now, these emission reductions, tracking them is a little bit comprehensive, and therefore we needed a system that can track these emission reductions.
So from the conception of this particular idea to now that we've seen the launch of the same, how long has that taken?
Yeah, we started in 2015.
All right.
2015, that's when we started on the project. The project was registered in August 2015. And thereafter we started on looking for funds to develop this system. And we talked with the bank, with the World Bank. The World Bank granted us a grant of $800,000 and we started developing the system. Now, this system, as I've told you, tracks emission reductions. But again, we saw an opportunity. Yeah, we saw an opportunity. We had this grant. We couldn't only track emission reductions. So we developed a system that is comprehensive. This system, for example, can track the lines being constructed. It can track where the transformers are. It can track the connections in real time, by the way. When you connect, like immediately, because we're using what we call mappers, the GPS machines. These GPS machines, immediately you press OK. It is transferred to our database in real time.
Right.
So it can track connections, it can track emissions, it can track consumption. So it does a number of things.
Right.
Yeah.
Let's talk about it tracking the connections, because I think that is one of the critical areas that was, you know, a big benefit, so to speak, especially for the agency and the electricity space, for instance. To what magnitude will it save costs in that regard? Because when you talk of electricity theft, that is illegal connectivity and illegal connections that are happening in the country every second, you know. So to what magnitude will it save on the losses in that regard?
The way to save on the costs, currently we have what we call a free connection policy. Now, this connection policy, the service providers connect. And after connecting, then we do verification. And then we do the refund. Now, in this case, this system does not allow, for example, duplicate meter numbers. It has the phone numbers of the consumers. It has a number of aspects. So now this system will save on that verification aspect, because in real time you can see this person has been connected and even you can make a call. So instead of having a number of verifiers, yeah, you can have few where you say, look at 10% of the connections and you are sure that what is in the system is okay.
Would you say that one of these factors, of course, being one of the challenges that the agency has faced over the years, would be the reason as to why we are only having 8% of the rural people being connected to electricity and an overall of 18.1% having direct access to electricity?
There are a number of things why we do not have bigger access rates. One of them is that the way our homesteads are because they are sparsely located and so forth and so on. So it becomes very expensive for you to take power to individual homesteads. That is one of them. Two is that of course most of our people, not most, some, like in rural areas, some of these people do not have capacity to connect. And actually that's why we have the free connections policy, because we realize that you take lines, but these people cannot do what? Cannot connect. So because of that, government came up with a policy of connecting, not forcefully, but what they do, they connect you, yeah, and then you start using, because the initial cost of connection is a little bit high, and most of our people cannot afford.
Correct.
Yeah.
So after the policy was actually, you know, rolled out, how many have been connected so far? What would you say?
There is
success rates.
Yeah, the success rate, actually the success rate is about 90%,
All right.
as I can say. And the policy has a target of 300,000 connections per year. So it was launched like 2 years ago. So already the connections so far achieved over 90%.
Over 90%.
Yes.
So you'd say that it's a move in the right direction.
It is moving in the right direction.
You know, government rolled out a very ambitious kind of strategy, and they call it Vision 2040, whereby they see that by 2040 we'll have 80% of the population of Uganda having been connected to electricity. So would you say we're on course with that?
Actually, it is 100%. Vision 2040, it is 100%. And we are on course. Why? What we are doing now is first constructing trunk lines, yeah, because the issue has been you don't have trunk lines to villages, yeah. So when you construct trunk lines, it means you will come just to do densification, yeah. You intensify to these the consumers and what have you. So, like as of now, the national access is about 28%, and the target by 2030 is about 51%. Now, by 2030, we are sure that all the trunk lines, the necessary infrastructure will be in place. So, in 10 years, it means we'll need just to do some intensification. So, we are on track. By 2040, we should be able to have 100%.
100% connectivity.
Yes.
But will it be commensurate with the affordability? Because right now we've been grappling with tariffs. Well, you mentioned that you're not a tariff expert, but of course we can't veer off that conversation about, you know, the tariffs. So as we're trying to push for connectivity to get to 100%, as you call it, you know, by 2040, do you think a majority of Ugandans will afford the connectivity? Fine, we'll be connected, but do you think we'll sustainably afford having electricity in our homes?
I think government is doing some work in that direction, trying to ensure that, for example, the tariff comes down. You see, by rolling out free connections, yeah, because I cannot connect you and I expect you not to consume.
Use, yes.
Yeah, of course, the cost is still high, but government is doing everything possible to ensure that this the consumers can afford. But also, if you look at what is being done, yeah, in terms of job creation, skilling, all those aspects, they are meant to ensure that these people get some money in their pockets.
Correct.
Yeah. So
some
there are a
economic
number
empowerment.
of economic empowerment. Yeah. So there are a number of initiatives that are being done. Yeah.
All right.
To ensure that the people afford electricity.
You know, now that you're here, there's one question that Ugandans have been grappling with, and I think you can help us understand this. You know, in Uganda, we have a electricity generation capacity of 1,171 megawatts. And the peak demand stands at 600 megawatts. That means we have a surplus of over 400 megawatts, so to speak. Now, we always know the principles of business and economics. If there's a surplus, then the costs go down. But here it's different. We have a surplus and the tariffs are hiking by the day. I'll just give you an example of what the industrial users, you know, pretty much pay per kilowatt, of course, for their manufacturing, you know, endeavors. A manufacturer and industrial user in Uganda pays about 0.17 kilowatts, $0.17 kilowatts per hour. that is quite high. So how come we have a surplus and the tariffs are still off the roof? Help us understand that metric.
Yeah, true. We have the surplus and the costs are high. You know, when you are generating and people are not consuming, it means you have idle power, and this idle power becomes expensive. Yeah. Now, one of the reasons why we are doing these free connections, one of the reasons why we are trying to push for greater use of power is to ensure that this power which is idle is utilized, because when it is utilized, then the costs, of course, will go down. Yeah. So it is when the consumption increases, yeah, when the consumption increases, of course, it is, as you said in economics, if I'm generating, I'm using a certain, say, $100 per certain kilowatt hour generated. So the cost is constant, but the revenues are minimal.
Slim, right.
Slim, yeah. So what is happening now is, with that increased connectivity and so forth, you'll have the cost go down.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay. The other thing that Ugandans have never understood is, here we have a surplus. At least you've tried to help us understand with regards to why we have a surplus and the tariffs are still off the roof. Let us understand this other metric, whereby we have a surplus, but we're still importing electricity from Kenya. For instance, in 2017, Uganda, of course, Uganda exported about, let me see these figures, 40 megawatts of power. In 2015, we imported over 60 megawatts. And the conversation has always been fine. It's still growing up. In 2018, for example, let me come closer, we imported about 71.2 megawatts of power from our neighboring country. As much as you're saying that we are, you know, we are married when it comes to matters energy. But why is this? If you're saying that we have a surplus that is expensive to keep, why are we importing?
I think that is importation is not a unique thing. You see, what happens is, like one country, for example, Uganda, has developed its infrastructure up to Kisoro. Yeah. Now you find that Rwanda has no infrastructure up to where? Up to Kisoro. So you enter into an agreement, and then you supply the people in the neighboring country. So the same applies to the Kenyan side. So you find that maybe our infrastructure has not reached that point. So what happens? You have people on this side, and Kenya has already developed its infrastructure. So you try and import from Kenya to supply the people in the border area.
So what you're saying is an infrastructural challenge.
Infrastructure, and that's why government now is putting a lot of money in the infrastructure to ensure that all the areas around the country are reached. Yeah. So,
all right, fair enough. I think now it's adding up, it's making somewhat sense. But however, the other still, you know, bone of contention has been still going back, because whether we're importing or not, whether we're generating internally or not, whether we're also exporting, because we are, or not, the affordability factor is what is quite critical to every Ugandan. Every Ugandan wants to wake up to that day whereby there's this big announcement that we are all going to be connected, and not only that, we're all going to afford this electricity 24/7, 365 days a year in our homes. Now, the other conversation has been, do you think we're ever going to conquer this tariff challenge? Because I've heard experts trying to break down this metric and saying that where we went wrong as Uganda is commercializing the energy sector, electricity at that, having quite a number of private players in that sector. Do you think, do you buy into that narrative?
you see, what is, of course the tariff is high, but as I told you, government is doing everything possible.
For example? To
ensure that the tariff goes down.
For example?
For example, I've told you we're having this free connection. This free connection, we want, because the production costs are constant. but the consumption is minimal. So there is that imbalance. Now, with increased imbalance, with the increased consumption, you will have more revenues. Yeah. Now, when you have more revenues, it means you will cater for the production costs. Yeah. So you sort of reduce on the tariff. So what is happening now? The few that are consuming are paying for the entire production. So with increased consumption, you have this done. Two, apart from the tariff, we have talked about economic empowerment. Yeah, the communities are being empowered. Now, when people have enough money, because if you went to Sweden, for example, they have the highest tariff, but everyone can afford.
Right.
So it is when the empowerment is done, then there will not be a lot of complaints on the tariff.
But do you buy into that narrative that we went wrong at the privatization of this particular sector, having quite a number of private players in this sector? Do you think that was us shooting ourselves in the leg? For example, in this instance, government shooting itself in the leg?
I cannot say we are wrong or right, because by that time, the proponents of privatization must have seen a reason why privatization had to be done. So, of course, you can do mistakes. Yeah, you can do mistakes, privatize. But of course, after privatizing, you need to work backwards to ensure that all those gaps are addressed.
So working backwards, you mean regulating strictly?
Regulating, putting in place some instrument like economic incentives and disincentives and what have you. For example, if you privatized and the private person wants his money, yeah. So as government, then you have to put in some incentives. You have, for example, to pay for like half of the tariff,
right,
so that people can afford, but also the private person can get his money.
But do you think government has done well enough with regards to regulating on the tariff bit, especially for the private sector?
They are doing their best. They are doing their best. I can comfortably say they're doing their best.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. As we wrap this up, let's go back to the monitoring system. At what point do you think we're going to see some tangible, benefits out of this? What timelines are you giving yourselves?
Now, on the system itself, already we have more than 500,000 consumers or connections in the system. That's a very big number after, because we technically launched it in January 2019. So in 1 year, we already have that number. That's one. Two, as I told you, this system helps in calculating emission reductions. Now, when we get these emission reductions, we sell them to the international market and we get money. Now, this money already, it is used for helping the bottom of the pyramid, the poorest of the poor. So we are using this money to buy ready boards to connect the poorest of the poor. And so far, we have connected over using this very system, we have connected over 20,000 ready boards to the poorest of the poor. So you can see the system is already helping Ugandans get connected or access power.
Right. And what's the target? It's 20K, but what's the target?
The target is about 700,000 connections.
All right.
700 connections for the poorest of the poor.
Okay.
On this very project.
All right.
Yes.
Mr. Grace, your last remarks. What did you want Ugandans to know with regards to this new system and your agenda moving forward for 2020 in terms of rural connectivity to electricity?
Yes, this new system, of course, will help rural electrification in a number of ways. The first one is planning. Yeah, so we have better planning because we'll know where the networks are, we'll know how many people have connected, and of course, we use that data for planning. So we have better results when it comes to service delivery. Two, this system is going to help the service providers in capturing of data. And therefore, it will help, it will reduce on the timelines for connections.
All right.
If I apply like today, then in 2 days I should be connected. So because you are using an electronic data system, it will help Ugandans reduce on the timelines. And lastly, as I told you, it helps in calculating emission reductions. Now, emission reductions, because this is what we are doing, it is not adding any other thing, but it is helping us tap into the financing. Yeah, because this is what we are doing, but we sell our emissions with R.E.A.
Right.
We sell our R.E.A. and then we get money and we use this money to connect the bottom of the pyramid.
Right.
So in the coming, what I'm saying is that we're going to have more lines being constructed, kilometers of lines. We're going to have more connections being done.
Okay.
Yes.
Last question as we wrap this up. Current financial year, as we it's actually fizzling out. We are getting into the next financial year, 2020-2021. The energy sector was given 3 trillion. And that was up from 2 point something in the financial year 2018-2019. Do you foresee now, with all that breakdown, do you foresee an increment in that regard? The framework is still being worked on, but do you think with the NDP3, kind of prospects, do you think the finance ministry will allocate more to the energy sector?
Of course, I'm optimistic that the funding for the energy sector will increase. Why? Because energy is an engine of development.
Correct.
And if you see, like, government is putting more emphasis on the energy sector, because you cannot do anything, you cannot empower people without
sorting out the
energy sector, because it is the key area that enhances socio-economic transformation.
All right. Many thanks
Thank
for
you
coming
too.
through. Wish you all the best. We'll be, touching base with you to see how this system pretty much works, if at all you attain your 700K target. All right. Many thanks.
Of course, we attain it, and of course you can also log into the system.
All right.
So maybe next time you come to R.E.A, I will give you the login so that you can easily track and inform Ugandans on the progress of rural electrification.
All right, many thanks, Mr. Grace Bilikade, an environment specialist working with R.E.A, of course, for the CDM project right there. Keep your views coming. I can see your views right here. We're watching closely. I'm still online with you on #morning@NTV. We're live on Facebook and YouTube pages, NTV Uganda, and you'll find the morning at NTV live stream right there. Allow us to take a breather and also pay our bills. We'll be back with so much more. Stay with us.